So we are nearly there. We've talked about recruitment, we've talked about survey collection. So now we just need to talk about attendance and implementation logs and then participant evaluations, and then we will be done. So attendance and implementation logs were in your box. You've received 2 of them, one for badges for baseball and one for the comparison group. So I do want to note staff manuals are exactly the same for both groups. It doesn't matter who gets which, but these implementation booklets are different for the different groups, so make sure that you get the correct booklet. The leader of each program should bring the implementation booklet to all program sessions. And after each program session, we need you to take attendance and complete an implementation log. You should start on the very first day of the program when you administer the pre-program survey. And then at the end of the program, you'll mail the implementation booklet back to U of M in the box with the end of program surveys. So let's take a closer look at the forms in that booklet. So here's the attendance form. It's included at the very beginning of the implementation booklet. At the beginning of the program, you should clearly print the first and last names of all youth who are participating in the study in the left column of the attendance sheet. You may have other procedures in place for collecting attendance at your site, but on this attendance sheet, you will only need to keep attendance for youth who are participating in the evaluation project. Okay, so we don't need to know on this sheet about participants in the program who are not participating in the evaluation study. This is only for attendance of youth who are participating in the evaluation study. So take attendance during or immediately after each program session. For each session, you will label a column with the appropriate date and use check marks to show which youth were present on that day. You should leave all the forms in the implementation booklet because, like I said, you'll be sending this whole booklet back to us at the end of the program. So implementation logs then. So these are different for badges for baseball and for the comparison program. So first, I'm showing you the implementation logs for the badges for baseball group. Copies of both of these forms are included in your implementation booklet. The form for the comparison group is slightly different, and I'll show you that form on the next slide. The leaders of the badges for baseball group and the comparison group should complete an implementation log immediately after each program session. The form asks you to tell us how much of each day's planned activities were actually completed. It should take a few minutes to complete. Your responses on these forms are important for helping us figure out how much of the program participants actually received. Please be honest in reporting what you covered each day. Ripken Foundation staff and your local site directors will have access to your responses, and they may choose to review them to help improve local program implementation. For the badges for baseball group, you will complete different forms on the days when you do one of the 12 core badges for baseball lessons than on the days when you do other activities, like the survey that you will administer on day 1, for example. So on the days when you do one of the 12 core badges for baseball lessons, you will fill out the core lesson form on the left. On days when you do a different activity, you'll fill out the alternative activity form on the right. On the core lesson form, you'll see that you need to check a box to indicate the focus of that day's session. For example, you might check sportsmanship or resilience. On the alternative activity form, you should write in the focus of the session if that applies. So for example, on the first day of the program, when you're administering the pre-program survey, you might write pre-program survey as the focus of the session. Both forms ask you to write in the name of the person who led the session and the person who completed the form. This may not always be the same person, but the person who completes the form should at least be present at the session so that they can accurately report on what took place. Both forms also ask you to write in the number of law enforcement officials who participated, as well as the number of youth participants. The number of youth participants should be the total number of program participants who were present that day, not only those who were participating in the evaluation. So that's important and possibly confusing. So on the attendance form, remember, we only wanted the attendance of participants in the evaluation study. But on this implementation log, we are interested in knowing how many youth were in the program that day. So here you will write, let's say you had a program that had 30 kids, and 15 of those kids are participating in our badges for baseball evaluation. So you would write, on this form, you would write 30 for the number of youth participants. So once you've done that, you will check the boxes to report how much of each planned activity was completed. For days when you did alternate activities, you'll need to write in each of the planned activities. So for example, on the pre-program survey day, that would be the activity. Pre-program survey might be the activity, and then you would check, how much of that was completed. Other examples could be things like homework help or games, whatever, swimming, art, whatever the activity is. Field trips. Yeah, right. So on both of these forms, you'll be checking a box to indicate how much of that activity you got through. Did you do none of it? Did you do some of it? Less than half, most, more than half, or did you get all the way through? Finally, there's space provided for an explanation for why you may not have completed particular activities. So, if there was a fire alarm or programming was canceled or, whatever, there's some room there to explain why things didn't go quite the way you planned. And then there's also space on the back for you to share any additional thoughts about how things went that day. Comparison program implementation log is almost the same as the alternative lesson form for badges for baseball. Actually, it is exactly the same, except that it does not ask about law enforcement officials. So as with the badges for baseball alternative activities form, you'll need to write in the focus of the session and a brief description of each planned activity. The final thing to talk about are the participant evaluations. And so these you'll receive in that second mailing, and you'll fill them out on the very last day of the program. So you will you're rating participants' participation in the program and any changes that you've seen in them. So for badges for baseball participants, these ratings should be completed by the law enforcement officers who've been working with the kids throughout the program. And for your comparison group, this should be completed by a staff member who knows the youth participants well. Once completed, you should return those forms to U of M in the box with the end of program surveys. And here's just a quick look at what the form looks like. You'll need to write in the participant's name, the site, date, and the name of the person completing the form. Like I said, the form should be completed by someone who has worked with the participant since the beginning of the program and who knows them well. You'll need to check a box to indicate how much of the time the participant was actively engaged in the program activities, and then you'll circle a number to indicate how much the participant has changed since the beginning of the program on each of the 6 skills. And then there's space provided for comments.